Studying is one of the way human use to acquire knowledge, and today we are going to talk about active recall, which is one of the most scientifically proven way of studying. And if you believe the hype, its most efficiency move on highlighting note, rereading, and summarizing your notes. So let's start the video. My name is Elijah. Welcome back on my channel. I've actually been using Active Recall for a little bit while right now, and this actually allowed me to actually make this video and to actually explain to you guys what exactly is Active Recall, and now it's actually helping me right now with my studies in high school. So if you guys have actually come through Active Recall, we're going to start with what exactly is Active Recall. If I would like to describe Active Recall in a simple term, Active Recall is just testing your brain if you can actually retrieve the information that you are from receiving, and if you can actually be able to tell that with somebody else, which we may also consider as the Feynman technique, whereby you have to ask yourself the question to actually see if you're actually able to answer that question. If you're not actually able to answer that question, that's where Active Recall actually comes in. You will read the information so that you can actually remember it. An example of that is literally you getting your books, reading a new information, for example biology. If you're studying about the cell, what the function of the nucleus which control the activity of the cell, you read that the nucleus control the activity of the cell, you try to close the book and try to see if your brain can actually remember what's the function of the nucleus in a living cell. If you can't actually remember, you open your book to actually read what you are just from reading and close it again to actually see if your brain can actually assimilate and actually retrieve the information from your brain. So with Active Recall, you actually just store the information from your short-term memory to move it to your long-term memory, which is where spaced repetition comes in. Spaced repetition just actually spacing the repetition of the thing that you are learning every single day at a spacing time so that you can actually be able to learn it, and before you actually forget it, your brain will be able to pick it up, and literally the information will be moved from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. I'm going to illustrate one of the graph right here, which just simulate how a computer works, which is also how our brain actually works. The first step is actually learning, which you can compare it to a computer, which is like data input. For us humans, it's actually learning. When you are learning, that's when you kind of learn the information. When you learn something for the first time, it's actually stored into our short-term memory. So here is the information where it will be stored into our short-term memory. When it's stored into your short-term memory, it's actually hard for you to withdraw that information if you don't actually recall it or repractice it after a period of time. If times goes by, you're actually going to face getting cave, you're actually going to forget that information and you won't actually be able to remember it, which you have again to recall so that before you actually forget it, your brain will be able to pick up again the information and you can withdraw from the information whenever you want, whether you're learning a new language or you are maybe preparing for an exam, and that will be easier for you actually to be able to use Active Recall. That's where spaced repetition and Active Recall work. So if you have your long-term memory right here, you are working with your long-term memory, by actively recalling all the information that are in your short-term memory, they will be actually moved from your Active Recall, from your short-term memory to your long-term memory in this simple space right here. To move from your long-term memory to your short-term memory, which is compared to a computer as a RAM and a ROM. When you input something into your computer, it actually stored into a ROM at first, and when you kind of repeat and repeatedly, your computer actually store the information, whereby you can actually see, like when you want to type something like your password or anything like your email, your computer is actually being able to remember that no, when it starts with this name it actually ends like this, and your computer will actually give you a suggestion because it's actually stored in the long-term memory. It's no longer stored in the RAM. That's how it's actually working. So the other thing I would like to talk about, this software which you actually call Anki. Anki will actually help you to implement Active Recall and spaced repetition into your studies, which is one of the best software out there to use spaced repetition. Actually just a software that will actually give you flashcard, a basic flashcard or a closed flashcard. I'll put it on the screen so that you guys can be able to understand it. So a basic flashcard, what you do is just like, maybe you're asking a question like what's the function of the nucleus, you just type it, what's the function of the nucleus, and beyond, this is the beyond of the card, and that's where the answer will be. So you put the nucleus is control the cell's activity of the cell, so you input it in there. So when reviewing your cards, you come back to your cards, what the software will actually do, will give you this question, what the function of the nucleus. After seeing the function of the nucleus, you actually be able to see that know the function of the nucleus, you can actually ask your brain that, am I actually being able to remember am I actually able to remember the function of the nucleus? If you can't actually remember the function of the nucleus, that's where you will actually come with active recall. You recall again the information and your brain will be like, oh, the function of the nucleus is just controlling the activities that are happening in the cell, and that's where you'll be able to understand and recall all the information. And by doing that, if it was actually hard for you to recall the information of what exactly was the function of the nucleus, you actually have the space bar down here where it says easy, hard, very hard, or something like very good or very easy, something there. And it actually has a space repetition, which is one of the best things. Like you can actually divide it. Now this was actually easy for me to recall, so I'll put it maybe to 10 days. I actually would like to review this card in 10 days. So from the time you are learning the information, your percentage of recalling it is actually 100%. With by time goes by, it's actually decreasing. But when it reaches at the 10th day, before you actually forget it, you again recall it, and your mind is actually being able to pick it up and actually recall the information. An example of that is, you're actually working at a new shop, you meet this new guy which is called John. John is a new guy that actually was introduced to you, and you actually remember him because you can't actually remember him if John end up not coming to your work after 10 days, because you were introducing to him just the first day, and after starting working there, John never comes back and is actually not working with you anymore. So it will be hard for you to actually remember his name because you only met John once. But what would you say about the other people that you're working with? It will end up that you actually know the name of everybody that you're working with, but it will be hard for you to actually remember the name of who John was actually. So that's where active recall actually comes in, by actually being put in face, or by you being in face of something that you're actually learning that is currently new, and you, by practicing it every single day, by calling the name of people you're actually working with every single day, it will actually remove for your short-term memory to your long-term memory, and it won't be hard for you to ask like, what's this guy name, what is his name again, so that you remember it. It will be stored into your long-term memory, so you can withdraw it from whenever you want, and that information is temporarily stored into your brain. That's what I was trying to talk about. And the other software we're actually going to talk about right here, we're going to compare Anki to Notion, which is a not taking up, and you have all those other options. You can also use it for flashcards. But the bad thing about Notion is, if you actually get Notion and Anki, the good thing about Anki, it has space repetition. If you compare Anki to Notion and Quizlet, both of them, Quizlet also adds space repetition, but at a specific time we decided to remove. And the good thing about Anki is it will actually be free on the website and on your PC, but if it comes actually to your Android device, you actually have to repay for Anki and see how it's actually working. It's actually a good application. If you actually install Anki on your operating system on your device across all the platform that you are using at home, it will actually be good. You can actually access it anywhere you are and everywhere in the world, which is a good thing. The problem with Quizlet is it's actually payable, and they pay a small amount for Quizlet, but we decided to remove space repetition. That's where the problem comes in. You actually need space repetition to actually being able to withdraw all the information that you're from learning into actually practicing it every single day before you actually forget it, for you to move it from your short-term memory to your long-term memory, where it will be stored and you can withdraw from it, whether it's in an exam, whether you are learning a new language. That should be easy. Okay, that's it guys. I hope you guys were actually able to enjoy this video, and if this video was actually helpful for you, please make sure to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and don't forget to share it. And I'll be making a video about Anki and how to use it, and how to actually introduce you guys to Anki, so that you can be able also to implement active recall and space repetition in your studies, which is one of the best methods of actual learning right now. Because most of the time when I do rereading or highlighting, it's making me feel like I know the information, but literally asking myself a question, I can't remember that question. That's why we're actually talking here about active recall and space repetition. So if you guys really enjoy this type of content, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and don't forget to share it. And I'll maybe see you guys when I see you guys. Elijah. Peace.